we are going to start. Thank you to everybody who's attending today. There's still more being admitted into the room. There's a lot to talk about, and we always get a lot of Q&A on this. So I'm going to dive right into it, or let the chairman and CEO, Ed Weigel, dive right into it, and Ryan Gopel, CFO, to talk about the first quarter results and an outlook for 2023. With that, Ed and Ryan.
Great. Thank you, Grant. And thanks to everyone who's joining our call today. We appreciate your interest and your support, and hope that we'll be able to give you a good presentation. Today, as you know, we reported our first quarter earnings. And first, I would like to say thank you to our 436 team members for their great work in this quarter, during which we received our cargo certification and started cargo operations, while battling some uncontrollable events in January and February. But as we battled through those, we delivered a record revenue result in March of this quarter. We will get into the events, the uncontrollable events, and how we dealt with those later in our presentation. But I will say this: given the progress we made in the first quarter in building the platform and setting up the company for a huge second half of this year, Q1 was a very, very good quarter for us. And in the process, we're building a very resilient and resourceful workforce that can ensure our airline operates safely and efficiently every day. I want to talk first, before we get into the presentation, about our approach to this business. It is important for investors to understand how we think about our airline and our short and long-term planning. We have gotten to where we are. Today, 9 passenger aircraft, soon to be 10, and 1 A321 freighter aircraft, soon to be 2, with full 121 flag certification, with every other certification available to us except ETOPS, which we are on track to receive in November of this year. We can operate this airline now worldwide. We have done this with $28 million of capital, with $7 million of that $28 million in cash deposits on our balance sheet. We have minimized shareholder dilution. We have been extremely careful how we raise money, and we have used the money we do have to continually invest in this business. In my view, this board and this management team have done an exceptional job building this platform for minimal dollars and minimal dilution. And we have done this in a very uncertain economic and geopolitical environment. We went through the end stages of COVID and Omicron. This is after certifying this airline through the very, very bad days of COVID. Rising interest rates, inflation, rising oil prices, war in Eastern Europe, falling cargo demand, combined with an intense war for talent, particularly with pilots. We're constantly juggling a number of forces which impact our business, and that impacts the pace of aircraft deliveries. Having said that, since certification, we have taken delivery of an aircraft once every 2.5 months. Once every 2.5 months. That's pretty darn good. To take delivery of an aircraft requires months of planning. It also requires having trained crews, cockpit crews, cabin crews, cash for deposits, and for the conformity of the aircraft. It is an intensely choreographed effort to put an aircraft on a US 121 certificate. And for us to be at 10 and soon 12 aircraft on our certificate, including freighters, is a remarkable achievement. And we have been planning ongoing for the rest of our aircraft deliveries this year, subject, of course, to DOT and FAA approvals. So what is our approach to this business? It's important for you to understand how we view this. So let's get to the first slide. This is our approach to the business. We take a long-term view of this business. Many charter airlines want to get to 5 or 6 airplanes and think that they can just make money for the next 30 years. That is a not sustainable approach, and we have seen many charter airlines go out of business because of that. We take a long-term view. We are going to build a durable, sustainable, and long-term profitable U.S. charter airline. We continually reinvest in the business. We're undercapitalized for sure, but we take the dollars that we have, and every dollar goes back into the business. We're adding aircraft, both passenger and cargo aircraft. We're hiring and training pilots, and we'll get into the number of pilots that we've been able to hire and train over the last 2 quarters, it's quite remarkable. And we use information technology to its full capabilities to move towards total paperless airline. We integrate ground handling and fueling to better control our product. We invest in our ground handling operations, and we seek diversified revenue streams to reduce our overall risk. Again, let me stress, we take a long-term view of this business. We are in this for the long haul. We are building a platform. We are investing in our business. We are making sure that we've got a platform that's scalable and can take additional aircraft, both passenger and cargo aircraft, that we can ramp up our people and our infrastructure in a way that is sustainable and we can do within our budget requirements. That's our view of the business. And I think if anyone believes that we should take a different approach, then this investment may not be for you. So Q1 is a reflection of our approach. Cargo, after 2 years of planning, and we started cargo planning pretty soon after we started the certification process on the passenger side, but we knew because of the long planning time that's required to operate cargo airplanes, as well as get those cargo airplanes under LOI and under lease, that we had to start early. So we tied up 15 A321 freighters even before we were certified as a US 121 airline. Certification happened in the first quarter of this year, and we received our first airplane, and that airplane is now operating and operated for 21 days in Q1. Tremendous amount of effort, sweat, tears, and cash to do that, but we invested in this business, and this now is going to be one of the main drivers of our growth in the years to come. Cuba, big, important part of our strategy is to be the dominant charter operator to Cuba. We are now in that position. We've laid a strong foundation. We fly for the 3 largest tour operators to Cuba. We dominate that sector, and it's a good foundation of revenue for us each month. Pilots, we invest in pay and benefits to reduce attrition, along with intense focus on recruitment and training. We did a tremendous amount of that, and we'll get to a slide where we show how many pilots we have been able to recruit and train and retain, which is the most important of those 3 words as we move forward. Infrastructure, we're building our IT systems, but as well, we're building a great team of dispatchers, crew schedulers, flight attendants, finance, other team members within this organization. It's important to have each one of those teams operating, and as we like to say, we are a team of teams, and we have built the infrastructure for a sustainable platform that we can grow and scale and be sustainably profitable. And our certifications in the first quarter, culminating 18 to 24 months of work, we received our DoD, Department of Defense approvals. We received our IOSA certification which allows us to operate for other airlines. And we received our EASA certification, which allows us to operate within Europe, which is very critical as part of our business plan as we move forward. We've started ETOP certification in Q1, and we expect to receive our certification sometime in Q4 of this year. That will allow us to fly the North Atlantic as well as to Hawaii and other destinations in the Pacific once we have that certification. So our commentary on Q1, traditionally the slowest quarter in commercial aviation. Every major airline and most of the ULCCs lost money in the first quarter. We are different than a scheduled airline, and there's some different elements of our first quarter that impacted our profitability, which we'll talk about. But we had some significant scheduled maintenance during Q1 as a result of the leases that we put in place. We got tremendous lease benefits because of the scheduled maintenance that was scheduled as part of our acquisition of those aircraft, but we had to endure that during the first quarter. We got through that, but it effectively reduced our fleet by 2 aircraft. We knew that going in, and we had planned for it, but that allows us now to be relatively heavy maintenance free for the balance of the year. We accelerated hiring and training of pilots and flight attendants to allow us to execute what is a robust sold out summer schedule, and we'll talk about that in a moment. As mentioned, we added 2 major tour operators to our Cuba operation effective of March 1st. This gives us a stable long-term cash flow. $3 million from those 2 major tour operators. With the 3rd operator, we're up well over $4 million per month, which is a great foundation of revenue for us as we move forward. As I said, we finalized and received our key certifications, DoD, IOSA, and our TCO for EASA. We signed LOIs for 2 additional A320 passenger aircraft, and we had a deferral of a major U.S. government contract that we had planned for, which we had started to fly in December of last year. And because of some issues within the U.S. government about how they were treating trans-border issues on the southern border, this contract had to be deferred. Now, we are starting to pick up that work here in May, and that will continue for the balance of the year. We will eventually pick up all of that revenue again, but it impacted Q1. Outside of our control, we worked with our major client, the U.S. government, to mitigate that. We were able to get some other contracts in place quickly to sort of mitigate that, but we didn't go as far as possible in order to get to a break even in Q1. Had we had that major contract, and had we had a few less issues on getting our aircraft out of scheduled maintenance, our Q1 would have been break even or slightly positive. Let me say that again. Absent 2 issues outside of our control, both of which now we believe will be to our benefit as we move forward, we would have been break even in Q1 as we had predicted. As well, we had invested in the business in terms of cargo and aircraft and systems and people. And so, in my view, again, Q1 was a huge success for us. I'll ask Ryan to start going through some of our metrics.
So one of the key elements we talk about is, as we're more than just an airline. Many people categorize us as an airline. We try and position ourselves more as a service company, and as a service company, we sell block hours. You know, our metric, our key metric, is how many block hours. And a block hour, for those who don't know, is when an aircraft pushes back from the gate, the blocks come off, and when the aircraft gets pushed back to the gate, the blocks go on. It's flight time plus taxi. So the number of block hours per month is a key metric we track. The other key metric we track is how many block hours we fly per aircraft per month. Both of these, as you can see, have had double, if not triple-digit growth since March of last year, and we're continuing to see that trend going into the summer. Now, the key element in order to fly this aircraft and to perform these block hours is our pilot pool. As you can see, our pilot pool has grown from 65 to 85, or 60 to 85 over the course of the quarter, a 41% increase. We also allude to, I guess, in the later slide, we've continued that hiring into Q2, and we'll give you an update on that. And again, the net aircraft days per month, as you have seen, despite our block hours growing at 110%, our net aircraft days have only grown by 35%, which means we're utilizing the existing assets more effectively and more efficiently, and bodes well for what we consider our growth plan going forward. Looking at the Q1 23 results, $32.2 million in revenue, which is our best revenue quarter, sorry. Adjusted EBITDA of $2.5 million and adjusted EBITDA of $2.9 million. The key adjustments we put in to factor in is $500,000 for share-based comp and $1.4 million for pilot training, and $240,000 for a cash lease accounting adjustment. What I think this reflects is our ability to start delivering profit and how close we are to becoming a profitable airline, but while reflecting the investment we're making in our crews and infrastructure, as I alluded to.
The important issues here, now there's a loss of 2.9 on the EBITDA line. Had we had the revenue from the contract that was deferred, we would have been closer to 40 million in revenue. And that would have been just a blowout quarter for us. Sometimes things happen in this business, sometimes they happen in sequence. And that's what occurred in Q1. But we don't see this as any indication of the sustainability and the profitability of this platform. Again, we built the platform through this whole quarter and set us up for what should be a very robust second half of this year. And again, had we not deferred that revenue from Q1 until later in the year, we would have been break even or profitable for this quarter, even with all of the investment that we took into this business. And we need to emphasize that when we invest in this business in training and recruiting and hiring and all the other things that we do here in the company, we expense them immediately. There's very, very little that gets capitalized. So while we're creating assets for the company, we are expensing them as we go. And so this leaves us clean as we move forward, so that we've got good comparisons month over month and quarter over quarter as we move forward. Our outlook for 2023, we're reaffirming our forecast of 140 plus million in revenue, a positive EBITDA. 75% of the 140 million is under contract. The balance will be under contract here very soon. We expect unofficially to do much better than 140, but right now our guidance is between 140 and 145 million, frankly, for this year. A little over 12,000 hours have been contracted for 2023 to date. We have the potential to contract up to an additional 10,000 hours, depending upon aircraft delivery dates, which is a fluid element of our business, and we'll discuss that in a few moments. This compares to about a little over 10,000 hours that we contracted in 2022. Fleet size target at the year end, again, passenger between 9 to 12 aircraft and cargo 2 to 6 aircraft. This all depends on final DOT approvals and our ability to get these aircraft out of heavy maintenance and delivered to us on time, which is an industry-wide problem at this point, both on new aircraft deliveries coming from the OEM as well as used aircraft going through maintenance to be delivered to another lessee. In addition to this, later this year, we will start Department of Defense contracts. We're already bidding on some. We will complete our ETOPS, which allows us to operate over water 180 minutes. We'll finalize our Colombian AOC applications. We are actually entering phase 3 of our AOC process in Colombia, which is the Colombian CAA, their version of the FAA, reviewing our manuals and moving us on to the last phase, which are proving flights. We're focused like a laser on expanding both passenger and cargo charter businesses in 2023. We're well on track. Our revenue is there. Our systems are there. Our people are there. All of the infrastructure that we need to deliver in the second half of this year have been developed between the fourth quarter of last year and the first quarter of this year. We've set the stage for great growth, profitable growth, and a long-term sustainability of this platform. This gives you a sense of the breadth and depth of our operations that we'll conduct this summer. This just shows the scheduled operations. And when I say scheduled, we're a charter airline, but we provide essentially scheduled operations every day to Cuba, scheduled operations every day to the Dominican Republic, and scheduled operations to Cancun. And then as well, we will be operating out of Calgary for a Canadian airline called Lynx into LA, Las Vegas, and Phoenix. We'll be operating for Redway out of Lincoln, Nebraska to Las Vegas and Orlando, Atlanta, Minneapolis, Austin, and Dallas. And we have some other scheduled operations for other airlines that are shown here. This gives you an idea of the breadth of our North American operation this summer. And you can see on the bottom as well, we've blown out the Cuba operation. You see that we fly to 4 cities there, as well as Cancun. We will start operations into Haiti at the end of this month, and operations into Santo Domingo and La Romana are year-round, and this summer will peak with as many as 8 or 9 flights a week into the resort towns in the Dominican Republic. We are the only charter operator into the Dominican Republic this year from North America. We have gained 100% market share in the U.S. charter market to the Dominican Republic. Next is our operations in Europe. We'll fly 2 airplanes for TUI Netherlands out of Amsterdam. This is the initial schedule that we've been given. We will fly 400 hours per aircraft per month over 2 months, and then 1 aircraft in September. They've already asked us to extend the operation through the month of September with 1 aircraft. So this is a great operation for us. We'll be operating all over Europe, the Mediterranean, North Africa, Turkey, and Greece. And we're really looking forward to this. As you know, our operations last year were impacted by regulatory approvals. All of that has been solved. We've received all the approvals that we need. We have a great relationship with TUI. We now have a 3-year deal with them. And we're now talking to them about operations in the US where we can combine our strengths and our synergy and operate for tour operators here in the US with some of their aircraft and our infrastructure and back office operations. So we're looking forward to a great summer all over Europe, all over North America, all over the Caribbean. And as well, on top of this, we have all of our ad hoc operations. So we'll be flying to Greenland this summer for cruise lines. We'll be flying all over South America and Central America. And we'll be expanding our cargo operations starting this summer so that we'll pick up another post office route as well as routes out of Mexico and Texas into some of the industrial cities in the Northeast on behalf of some automakers and some others. So our cargo operations on top of our scheduled passenger operations lead us to a very, very robust summer. And we'll talk about the block hours that we project for this summer and on into the fall. These are 2 aircraft that we recently added to the fleet. On the left is another airplane that we took from Alaska Airlines. We've got a very good lessor, Airborne Capital, that we have been working with, and we chose to paint this in what we would consider a retro livery. It's got a lot of interest and a lot of kudos for this particular livery that we put on this airplane. And as well, we took our first cargo aircraft, N410GX. We received that in February, finalized all of our cargo certifications, and that airplane started flying on March 10th. It's had 100% dispatch reliability, lower fuel burn than what we had been projecting, and greater reliability. And the customers that we have flown this airplane for love the aircraft, love the lower belly loading system, love the fact that it's 50% more volume than its main competitor. And it's just a great airplane. And we've got 15 more of these coming over the next 24 months. Again, when we've shown this slide previously, but we're moving towards 30 aircraft by the end of 2024, moving more towards a mix, an equal mix between passenger and cargo aircraft. And we'll eventually get there probably in 2025, but we still see this as our evolution of aircraft over the next 2 years. This is all impacted by a number of things, as we've discussed. Heavy maintenance prior to delivery. We've experienced delays in every aircraft that's come out of heavy maintenance, just like every other airline around the world has been experiencing. It's subject to having crew availability. We have to recruit, hire, and train pilots and flight attendants. So that's a constant process, and it impacts our ability to take aircraft on a certain schedule. And as well, other factors, including our ability to put these aircraft to work, to ensure ourselves that we've got contracts that we can fly for these aircraft as soon as they're on the certificate. But we feel very comfortable with these numbers over the next 2 years. And this is our delivery plan. The A320 was delivered. N411GX, which is our next freighter aircraft, which brings us to 2 freighters, now should be delivered the last week in May. We'll need to do some conformity and some regulatory work on that airplane, but we expect that airplane to be flying in revenue service in early June. Now, let me stress, and all of you know this because we have talked about it, our first freighter aircraft was delayed about 6.5 months coming out of conversion. And this second airplane, the second freighter, is going to be delayed about 8 months. If we had had both of these aircraft as we had projected in December of last year, right, our profitability, we would have had an additional $6 million of revenue in Q1. But we were impacted by their ability to get these aircraft out of the MRO get the components and parts that they needed, get the manpower that they needed to get these aircraft converted and get them to us. So significantly negatively impacted by the inability of the MROs to get the aircraft to us. And that will continue for some time. But we are making the best of it. These aircraft are coming in as soon as we can get them, and we are putting them out to work as soon as we can get them. Our target plan for the rest of the year is several additional A320 passenger aircraft, as well as several additional freighter aircraft. And again, we are impacted by their ability to deliver the aircraft out of heavy maintenance. And so some of these dates will slip, but that's okay. We will deal with that and we will adjust. We'll get these airplanes in and we'll get them to work as soon as we can, which is another way of saying that we need to take a longer term view of this business. There are lots of factors outside of our control that impact our ability to operate. We have a team that knows how to adjust to that. We have a team that knows how to accommodate those issues. We just have to work through it like every other airline is working through it as we speak. So I'm entirely confident in our team to be able to adapt to delays in aircraft, delays in deliveries, and the impact that has on our customers and our operations. But we know how to deal with that. We've dealt with it over the last year, and we will continue to do so. Again, take a longer term view of this business. Where are we going to be a year from now? Where are we going to be 2 years from now? Short-term issues and events that affect us do not impact our longer term vision for this airline and what we will accomplish. Where do you want you to take us through passenger sales?
Sure, passenger sales, we've discussed many of these elements, but this is sort of a way of summarizing it. The two major tour operators generating about 3 million a month, over 600 hours with Lynx Air, 240 hours a month with Redway Air out of Lincoln, Nebraska. That's starting as a 3-month program. We expect that to be year round. 150 hours per month for 4 months with a Caribbean airline, which we expect to be extended as well. In addition to the 2,000 hours per year with TUI for the next 3 years. We've executed on our March Madness strategy. We talk about our servicing the NCAA. We operated over 70 flights over 3 weeks, almost 50% of all flights from March Madness. Focusing on securing for the fall, when we look at contracts to be secured, we're focusing on securing NCAA fall football, Department of Defense, and ultimately basketball and other government business, which is with a sold out summer, that's where our sales focus is really tied to right now. Going into cargo, as Ed alluded to, we operated 21 days in Q1. The second aircraft will start on June 1. First aircraft, 100% dispatch reliability, operating cost and fuel burn less than forecast, really proving out the economics of this aircraft. With the lower belly system now installed, it's a big differentiator versus the competition, which is really 737s, 800s, and 757s. We're very excited to go with this product. We are excited to having 15 more of these coming online, and we're even more excited about what our customers are reacting to, and they truly understand the economics of this aircraft. And this really business comes down to economics.
So we had projected and expected 6 aircraft months of freighter operations in Q1, and we ended up with 21 days. Now we're going to operate this airplane for the next 15 years. So a blip in Q1 where we had some delays in aircraft that we worked through, and instead of 6 aircraft months, we ended up with a little less than 1. It's frustrating and it impacted us short term. But again, let me say, we're going to be operating all of these airplanes, some of them for as long as 15 years, some for 10 years, but many of them for as many as 15 years. This is a great airplane for the market, great airplane for us. And we take a long-term view of this business. We are going to build a very, very robust, very sustainable cargo business around this aircraft, and then its sister ship, which will be the A330 cargo aircraft in the next year to 2 years. So had we had 6 aircraft months available to us of cargo aircraft in Q1, that's almost $7 million in revenue. And we ended up with a little less than $1 million in revenue. But again, it's 1 quarter in 1 year. We're going to be operating this airplane for 15 years. Pilot recruitment is something that we focus on at an 8 a.m. meeting every morning here in this conference room. In the Q1, we grew our pilot headcount by a little over 40%. In Q2 to date, another 30%. We're utilizing the agreements that we have in place now to increase our pipeline, and we've talked about this before, OSM, CAE, L3, and our use of the Colombian AOC, once we get through that certification process, will allow us to attract pilots there that will fly on the Colombian certificate until we can get them up into the US. But we will also use those pilots to fly intra Latin America, as well as from Latin America to the US, which takes some pressure off of our need for US based pilots. We are getting much better at this for a number of reasons. One, we are seen as a stable, sustainable airline. Now that we've reached 10 airplanes, and given the progress that we've made in cargo and our certifications, some pilots who have left us for major airlines we've got 2 calls from pilots this week asking if they could come back to GlobalX. The grass is not as green at some of these major airlines as many of them think, and some of them have asked to come back to us. We think that's a pretty good sign. So we've been successful in our recruiting and hiring efforts for pilots, both direct entry captains as well as first officers. As we grow, as we get stronger, as we show that we have a quality of life here that is better than other places where they can fly, and that word gets out through the pilot ranks throughout the industry, we think that we will do better than our fair share of pilots and good pilots as we move forward.
Yeah, one thing that I wanted to touch on is on the investor relations side. We did have an issue, I would say an issue. There was concern, I think, on the last call as it related to warrants that were expiring. On April 26, 4.6 million warrants did expire, which reduced our fully diluted share count by a little under 8%. If you look on the right, an updated cap table of our common Class A and Class B. We also show our existing warrants that are outstanding. It should be noted, of those 11 million warrants, 9 million of those warrants are restricted in the sense they can't convert into more than 4.9% of common equity. So from that perspective, it's likely those will go to expiry if they do get converted. If you look at the fully diluted number, again, one of the elements of recruitment is on RSUs. We really do encourage employee ownership and employee RSUs for retention. Most of those vest over 3 years. But again, I think our capital structure as it is right now is pretty tight considering where it was from the beginning and to where we are now. If you look at some of the initiatives we did in Q1, we have a digital program that has increased our mailing list by 14,000 names. Many of you are on it. Attended 2 major microcap conferences, Planet Microcap and Sequoia in Puerto Rico. Registered to present at the Gravitas Conference June 5th in Los Angeles. And we are still planning an uplist in conjunction with growth and capital raise in 2023. It will not be a Q2 event. It will be later in 23 is our ambition, as we've alluded to on the previous call.
And as we said in the press release that we put out today, we're in active and I would say advanced discussions with a number of equity funds and other credit funds about financing our business going forward. We've got a tremendous amount of interest. I need to be careful about what I say, but I think that we are in good position. And let me stress something that I said in my preamble to this presentation. This management team has been very, very diligent and very, very careful in how we raise money and how much money we raise and the dilution that results from that. I think that we've done between us and the board of directors, we've done a great job in managing that. Again, we have gotten to this point in our life cycle with 28 million of cash, 28 million, 7 million of which we still have. It's on our balance sheet for deposits for airplanes and airports and other deposits that we have to make. Given the progress that we've made, 121 flag carrier with all of the certifications that we have, plus cargo, plus the ability to tie up 15 A321 freighters, All of those things combined for the price tag that we have brought this in for, and the dilution, or the minimal dilution that we believe we have endured, I think is a tremendous statement about this management team and this board of directors in delivering value to its shareholders. Are we frustrated with the share price? We see a lot on social media, and I get a lot of messages beating me up over it. And all I can say is I have more shares than anybody out there. And so if anybody is as frustrated about the share price, it's got to be me. What I do is I come in here every morning at 7 a.m. and I don't leave until 7 p.m. and we work hard every day, including Saturdays and Sundays, to build this company to create shareholder value. And we will continue to do that. We have a tremendous platform that we have created, and we're about to reap the benefits of that as we get into the second half of this year. We will do what we can in outreach. Ryan has done an incredible job. He must talk to 30 or 40 investment groups every week about who we are and what we're doing. He attends the conferences. We have Zoom calls. We are getting the word out there. A lot of this is restricted because of our where we are listed, and many institutions will not be able to invest in us until we get to NASDAQ. We think about NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange just about every day and how we can get there. And I will assure you that we are focused on that and doing everything that we can to get there. No one is as interested in the stock price as I am, but I'm more interested right now where we are in our life cycle as a company. I am more interested in ensuring that we have built a sustainable, profitable platform that can continue to grow and continue to compete effectively against our competitors. We have put all of the building blocks in place, certifications, aircraft, people, infrastructure to do that. That's the most important thing at this point, because we take a long-term view of this business and we're creating long-term value for our shareholders. Finally, just something that we wanted to ensure everyone knew, and we're quite proud of this. We work very, very hard here to create a culture with the right set of values. It's the way we work with and we treat our team members. We went through a pretty rigorous certification process with surveys and interviews with our team members by an outside group called Great Place to Work. They have certified companies like American Express and Delta Airlines and others. So we went through that process, and we received our certification for this coming year. We're quite proud of that. We're putting that in all of our recruiting materials, especially to pilots and flight attendants. And we think that this indicates that we're on the right track in terms of building a culture with a set of values that will allow us to maintain this airline and grow it profitably in the years to come. So with that, Grant, I'll turn it back to you for questions. And again, we appreciate everyone, your interest and support on this call. So Grant, fire away.
Ryan, great job as always. And as I say, every quarter on these webinars, try and find me another company listed on a junior exchange in North America that's accomplished as much for so little as you folks have. So congratulations. Number of questions already, and I'll get right into it. 400 plus employees. Can you please tell us what your monthly payroll is, including taxes and benefits?
I think I would hate to quote a number and be wrong. It will be in our queue under salaries, wages, and benefits. Just divide that by 3.
So that includes, let's talk about the various categories within that. That includes all of our ground handling and fueling operations here at MIA, which is approximately 60 to 70 people, right? That is in place because it effectively reduces our overall cost. By having those people in place, it reduces our ground handling cost on a turn of an aircraft here in Miami from the market rate, which is about $2,900 a turn, down to about $1,500 a turn. So that's a very, very effective use of capital and a very effective use of team members because it reduces our overall cost. On the fueling side, we are now at break even, even with all of the fuelers and the fuel trucks and so forth that we use. The important thing about our fueling operation is it ensures that our aircraft depart on time. The other fuelers here at MIA, at Miami International, are not very good. And we were experiencing delays every day, sometimes 2 or 3 hours, because they focus on American Airlines here at MIA, and we were always an afterthought. So we went and got our own certificate to fuel our own airplanes. And now we're on time and we're breaking even. And now we are approaching other airlines to fuel their airplanes. And we expect this to be a profit center for us in the next quarter to 2 quarters. On the other categories, we've got obviously pilots, a little over 100 pilots, which we need to fly the summer schedule. Flight attendants, again, to fly the summer schedule, about 150 flight attendants at this point, over 3 bases, Las Vegas, San Antonio, and Miami. And then we've got maintenance. We do a lot of our own maintenance in-house. So we have aircraft maintenance technicians who operate on our aircraft. And so we've got a large contingent of them that actually drives our costs down. So we have built here in Miami the ability to handle our own airplanes, to fuel our own airplanes, and to maintain our own airplanes, which is almost unheard of for an airline of this size. And overall, it reduces our costs, increases our operational efficiency, and makes us a much better airline because of the vendors out there who, shall I say, don't really perform up to our standard. Beyond that, we are growing our finance team. We have a very, very complicated operation over Europe and the US, and we operate for lots of different clients. And we're a public company, so we need a fairly robust finance team. On the dispatch side, as we grow our operation, which is now a 24/7 operation, we have dispatchers on through the night because we operate 24 hours a day. And that also includes crew schedulers and others who help us to operate on a 24-hour schedule. So may seem like a lot, but we have built the infrastructure now so that we can take all of the airplanes that we expect to take this year in advance of when those aircraft come, which is a requirement of the DOT and the FAA.
And to answer the question about 3.7 million.
On the topic of money, with a question here about some bad debt write-offs. Don't we ask for payment in advance? And I'm going from memory, but weren't the bad debts something under $20,000 that were written off?
Yeah, we do ask for money, cash in advance. We do have elements of reconciliations when we incur cost after the fact. They tend to be pretty minor in the big scheme of things. And so, yeah, I think the numbers are small, but there are true ups. So we have a base fuel price. So we invoice the customer for fuel after the fact. We did actually have some bad debt recovery. I think it was a recovery this year. So we had written some off and then collected it after the fact. So
But it's certainly less than
it's de minimis.
0.25%, and probably much less than that. We focus on that a lot, as Ryan said. We do a fuel reconciliation, and because it's after the fact, sometimes we get into a healthy discussion with the client. 99% of the time we collect the money because they need us to fly again for them. But it's like any business. There are some things that are collected after the event, and sometimes we have to negotiate a deal. But it's a de minimis amount of money that we write off.
Ed, you addressed this in part, and I understand you have to be cautious, but it's a bit of a two-parter. It says, how active are discussions on raising capital, and in this rate/credit environment, is it the case of getting a good deal versus any deal?
The financing, and Ryan will provide some color to this. For every business out there right now, the financing environment is tough. Right? Last year, every private equity fund pulled in their a closed up shop and wanted to see what happened. Right, And as I said in my preamble, right, we're dealing with a lot of different events right now. We've got inflation, right? We've got rising interest rates. We've got a war in Europe. We've got issues with the southern border, lingering effects of COVID, and on that we have dealt with. Having said that, through the course of the last 18 months, we get approached almost continually by people who want to take a look at us and see if it makes sense for them to invest in us. As you know, we've done almost none of that. We financed ourselves internally with some of our investors because we don't want to suffer the dilution that would come from that. We've lived on our own resources. We've lived on our own cash. We are thinly capitalized in terms of working capital. We're talking to a lot of different groups, and as we've said in the press release, we're in what we think are advanced discussions with a number of parties. Nothing is set. Nothing is, nothing has been signed. We look at a range of different ways to invest in this company. Because of our stock price, most of those ways are involve a debt or a credit facility with warrants. We're negotiating very hard with each one of those. We've negotiated with a number of groups who've walked away because perhaps we've been a bit too tough on them, because we're really bullish about this business and we want them to pay for what we think we have created here and what the potential opportunity here is for an investor. But we're in order for us to take additional aircraft and grow the way we want to grow and to put some cash on the balance sheet, which is important. As we move forward, and there may be other external shocks to the entire ecosystem around the world, we need more cash on the balance sheet. So we're talking with a number of parties. We've got two great investment banks that are working with us and advising us. And I need to be very careful, but I am optimistic. And I don't know, Ryan, if you want to add some color.
No, I think, we believe we have a great platform, and we're very encouraged about what's going forward, and there's a lot of interest in what we're doing and how we're doing it.
I think universally the reaction that we get as we do our initial talks, and then groups may get into a data room that we have put together, is that they are amazed at how far we have gotten on such little cash and the platform that we have built. And so they see the opportunity. And again, because of our stock price, we've got to be very careful about how we structure this. They understand that, and they're all working with us. And we're looking at facilities, a credit facility, and even in some cases, facilities to be able to acquire our own aircraft instead of lease moving forward, not using operating leases, but being able to acquire aircraft to put on our balance sheet. So again, Ryan and I are optimistic. We talked to a lot of groups. We've got a number of groups that are very, very interested. It's getting the right deal that's in the best interest of all of our shareholders. And we keep in mind the interests of all of our shareholders in every one of those discussions.
Comment here about your candidness and holding these quarterly webinars. I will paraphrase this next question, but effectively asking if to secure contracts, you're bidding at lower rates than perhaps the competition. Again, I had to paraphrase this one.
The question is what, to get to where we are, we've been discounting? Is that the?
Yeah, effectively, yeah.
No, so we've done an analysis, which Ryan has run. He and his team have sliced and diced our data now, and we're starting to get enough data from enough months of operation that we can actually start to look at trends and how we're doing. So our unit economics, and I'll let Ryan talk about this, but essentially we've been improving every month in our unit economics. So our need to discount, to use sharp elbows to get into the business, that's waning very quickly because of our reputation now for providing a great product in terms of our aircraft and how they look and how our crews look and act, and the professionalism of the entire organization. We believe that we're in a position where we can increase and continue to increase our block hour rates. Now, of course, it all depends on time of year. There are certain months that are are not as robust in terms of activity as other months. July and August, very, very solid. December, very, very solid. March, very, very solid. Other months, the shoulder months and the low points of the year, we have to do some discounting. But I think you should talk a little bit about our unit economics.
Yeah, so we make the statement that every flight we fly, we make money. And what that means is we don't fly empty aircraft. You know, one of the risks in a scheduled carrier is you fly an aircraft, you don't sell enough seats, or you don't sell enough seats at the right price, or fuel goes up and you end up burning money on a flight. You know, every flight we fly generates contribution to overhead. As we've been growing the business and adding and getting utilization, so there's really two metrics. There's how much did you make per hour and how many hours did you fly? So we've seen considerable improvement in our unit economics and how much we're making per hour, especially over the last 9 months. And as we add aircraft utilization, which means the number of hours we fly, we get much closer to the unit economics we talked about, and we have talked about over the last 18 months of targeting, you know, 200 to 250,000 a month in contribution margin for passenger aircraft and 400 to 500,000 a month for cargo. We're working towards that goal. We're getting close to that goal every day, and I think we've seen considerable improvement, especially over the last 9 months as we get towards that. As we add aircraft, that becomes easier to accomplish because you can be more efficient in the way you deploy the aircraft, and that trend is held true over the last 9 months.
So and to just sort of add to that, one of the revenue streams that we have developed stems from the fact that, as I mentioned before, we're impacted by our ability to get our aircraft out of maintenance. The major airlines out there, including the LCCs, are having difficulty getting delivery of new aircraft from the manufacturers. In some cases, delayed as much as 2 to 2.5 years to get those airplanes. We're getting calls every day from airlines asking if we can provide airplanes to them to fill in until they get their new aircraft from the factory. And in those cases, they don't ask too much how much we're going to charge them. They just say, how many months can you give us the airplane? So we're seeing that there's an actual shortage of aircraft out there. And that's a result of the maintenance delays, inability of the manufacturers to get the airplanes through their factories because of supply chain issues. And we think that this condition will exist for the next few years. That will have upward pressure on block hour rates that we charge and will make us more selective, so we can fly more differentiated revenue streams that are focused on that line of activity, as opposed to some of the other charters where we don't get a very good block hour rate. So we can be more selective as we move forward with the clients who we fly for to maximize our revenue.
Ryan, you've already spoken about NASDAQ uplist this year. Question here is, are you on track to uplist this year? I don't know if you want to say anything else further to what you already said. Okay.
I think we've said enough.
Yeah, there's really not too much that we can say there about that. Everyone knows what our objective is. And we would have to add assets to our balance sheet to be able to do that. And we are working actively to do that.
Speaking of long-term, which has been the theme of this webinar, question is, I understand the long-term goal. You need a critical number of aircraft, pay, amortize, fixed costs across the operation. Nevertheless, when do you expect profitability?
Yeah, I think we expect profitability this year. We said we'll be profitable in 2023. I think, you know, what I don't want to do is a mistake. So a mistake this quarter would have been not to hire 40 pilots to fly this summer because we were worried about being profitable this quarter. You know, I think as we look at the forward-looking numbers, as we look at how much work we have, we need to make sure we can do it. You know, I think ultimately when we get to 10 passenger, 2 to 4 freighters, I'll be very comfortable with our profit numbers going forward on a monthly basis, and we'll be able to absorb that kind of growth, because as a percentage, it won't be doubling your pilot corps. It won't be doubling your fleet in a span of 4 to 6 months. So we would stay with 2023. We'll be profitable, and we're really excited about this summer.
Important thing to remember, Okay, the charter airlines, scheduled airlines, that got to 7 or 8 airplanes and said, "This is great. We will now reduce our burn, and we will just operate 7 airplanes, and we will make money every quarter." Every one of those went out of business. Why? Because for a couple of quarters they made money, and then they didn't grow. When they didn't grow, the amount that they pay pilots and the amount that they pay flight attendants, the amount that they pay everybody else has increased. And with a small number of airplanes, they are very, very vulnerable to outside shocks. Right? So we could have managed this business to get to 7 or 8 airplanes and produce profits, and everyone would have been happy, and we would not have survived very long. I've been doing this for 40 years. The airlines that make money and survive, are the ones that have reasonable, sustainable growth. They invest in their business. They understand that they need to continually increase the number of aircraft units that they operate, bring in lower priced, lower salaried employees at the bottom of the scale continually to reduce your overall employment costs, and to show that there is a career growth for the employees and team members who are there. Every airline that went to 6 or 7 airplanes and said, "Hey, this is great, we can make money for the next 30 years, was out of business within 2 years. You cannot do that. The history of the last 40 years indicates that that's a mistake that we were not going to make. We're not going to manage for short-term results. We're going to manage this company on behalf of our shareholders for long-term growth, long-term sustainable profitability. We're developing assets every day. A lot of those don't show up on the balance sheet, but they are there. 15 A321 freighters are not on our balance sheet. But I get calls every day from airlines wanting to know if they can have our airplanes. That doesn't show up anywhere on any balance sheet. It's no asset. Okay? But what we've got is 15 A321 freighters coming that will drive tremendous growth in this company, will drive tremendous profitability. If we wanted an airline that went to 7 airplanes and stopped, we would have done that months ago. And we'd be hurting right now. Because pilots would not want to come and fly here. Flight attendants would not want to come and work here. Great finance people would not want to come and work for an airline that's only got 7 airplanes and has no intent to grow. And so all of those factors go into the fact that we need to take a longer term view of this business. People don't like the fact that short term, our profits are impacted by the fact that we're investing in our business. I have to manage this airline in a fiduciarily responsible way. And that is the best way to be responsible as a fiduciary, is to continue to grow this airline and invest in this business.
And I think we demonstrated that in Q3 of last year. If you looked at our aircraft, we had been at 6 for a couple of months. We hadn't really grown. We had stabilized at 6. We took our 7th aircraft in August, at the beginning of August, and we generated a profit in Q3. Looking forward, the idea was we didn't want to stay at 7 aircraft. We wanted to add cargo. We wanted to add 3 passenger aircraft. We're looking to add, 2 to 6 cargo aircraft. And that investment really started in Q4. And I think you're seeing that in the numbers, but that will pay dividends and that will pay off as we get into these summer months.
The other benefit of having of growing an airline is when you do get a minor shock, like the deferral of a government contract for a few months, it becomes less and less materially significant to the company, the larger the company is. Right? The smaller the company, the more material that shock is to our system. So therefore, we need to diversify our revenue streams. We need to have a larger base of aircraft operating for a diverse set of clients so that any one issue doesn't become a black swan issue for us. It's just a minor irritant along the way. And we're building this airline so that there are no external shocks to the system that will take us out of business.
This is a grand vision question. Can you paint the picture of what GlobalX will look like post 50 planes in the air, targets, goals for the next 3 to 5 years? What is your long-term big picture growth plan, such as drones, next-gen technology? acquisitions, growth? There's a lot of moving parts on that question.
Yeah, there is. Well,
How much time you
the
got?
first thing
How
is
much
to
time
get,
you got?
yeah, the first thing is to get to 50 aircraft, to the 50 aircraft number, right? And, you know, each aircraft that we take on, as I mentioned in my preamble, right, takes a tremendous amount of effort, especially these days, given the issues with maintenance facilities and new regulations, aging aircraft regulations. All of that impacts the timing and our ability to take aircraft on a schedule that we want to take them on. So a lot of our day is consumed with planning for the delays and other issues around getting the airplanes here and on the certificate. Having said that, this team does an incredible job doing just that, taking these airplanes, getting them conformed, getting them into our configuration and getting them on our certificate. So immediate goals are to get to 25 passenger 320 family, 25 A321s. We are also looking at the A330. We're in deep discussions about that. We wanted to get through these 2 quarters and make sure that we are prepared for this summer and fall, which will be very, very big quarters for us. And we also have just gone through a process of getting certified in a number of ways, and now we need to get ETOPS certification. So bringing an A330 on is another layer of complexity. We need to be a bit bigger before we can do that, but we have the capability in-house to do exactly that. And we want to get 330s on the certificate as soon as we can in a way that makes sense without negatively impacting the rest of the operation. So longer term, we will operate A320s, A321s, A330s. Eventually, as the new generation A320s get a little older and we can afford them as a charter airline, we want to take 12-year-old A320 NEOs, which is a 20% savings in fuel burn, newer technology aircraft, lower operating costs, and all of that. We're not quite there yet. We have got to wait for a few more years for the prices of those to come down so that we can effectively employ them within our budget. But beyond that, we see M&A opportunities for us in the years to come. We see opportunities to take this brand and scale it. And there's a very, very good reason why we call it GlobalX. We're looking at putting an AOC in Europe. We've got the AOC that we'll have in Latin America. And we believe that there is a big and growing market and a demand for this type of airline in Asia. And so we've done very, very preliminary work. We don't think much about it at this point because we've got other more important things to do. But I think that eventually in the next few years, we can put a GlobalX in Southeast Asia. We can put a GlobalX maybe in Australia, GlobalX in other parts of the world, perhaps on some sort of franchise basis where we provide aircraft and crews and support systems and infrastructure. We haven't thought through all of that, but we think pretty broadly about this business. We think the ACMI business is a growing business, a good business for us to be in. And we're looking at ways where we can scale this around the world and other parts and other continents where this sort of service is needed.
You were talking about the summer and being busy. Yet the question here is, after the big push to hire pilots and flight attendants, do you anticipate you will be fully staffed for the demand for summer and the second half of this year?
Yes.
The short answer is yes. So big push Q4 and Q1 of this year to bring pilots on. And the cost per pilot to have them in training for 3 months, putting up hotels, per diems, simulator time, instructor time, getting them out on OE is
$28,000 a month over 3 months.
so $28,000 per month per pilot over 3 months to get them ready to fly the line, right? So it's almost short of $90,000 to bring a pilot on and to get them ready to fly. And we've got to do that in advance of that airplane being delivered to us so that those pilots are in place. So you can see what the cost is just by doing simple math, of us have 110 pilots on our certificate able to fly our airplanes. That's a significant investment that we made in pilots. We made a significant investment in quality of life for them and benefits so that we don't lose them. No point in doing that, spending $90,000 and then being a little cheap on benefits or some other light quality of life issues, and then having them move off to a Spirit or an Allegiant, 6 months after we've trained them. Not a very, very good effective use of our cash, but it's a tremendous investment that we have to make in human resources to be able to operate this airline. We've made that investment. We're in position to fly a very, very busy and robust summer schedule, as you've seen in the two maps that we put up on during the presentation.
Question about Flugy, as can you provide an update, please, and perhaps remind folks what Flugy is?
So Flugy is an on-demand charter tool that would basically allow you to crowdsource charters. It's been developed, the technology is valid and available. I think over the last 2 quarters, we've really been focusing on growing our passenger charter business. And we'll be revisiting that in the summer and looking to monetize that going into the end of 2023.
Yeah, our strategy there is to attract some outside investors so that we can spin this off. Investors who understand technology and some of the areas that we're not as versed in. What we want to do is provide aircraft for the charters that Flugy creates. Our goal is to maintain a minority stake, but have well-heeled investors who understand technology and some of the other aspects of that business, so that we can ride their coattails, but most importantly, would be a great source of charter business for us as that platform grows. We've got a very, very nominal amount of investment in that business. We believe that we can get it capitalized with some very savvy, well-heeled outside investors. But we've quite frankly been so busy getting ready for the summer that we haven't spent a lot of effort on it. We're talking to an individual who we think we can bring in, who can take that whole company and platform to the next level. So it's very much on our minds to do something there. It's a little bit lower on our list of priorities right now. We need to make sure that the mainline company is performing well and prepared for the second half of this year.
A couple of people have asked about progress on and status on the Fort Lauderdale facility.
So we've received final approval from the FAA, or at least the developers and builders have received final approval from the FAA. We've got 2 financing sources now that have come in and committed to building the facility. We're hoping to break ground here within the next 60 days. And we're still aiming for Q4 of 2024 to occupy that facility.
Can you please explain why adjusted EBITDA excludes pilot training costs? Aren't these regular ongoing expenses?
So those are regular ongoing expenses for existing pilots. These are pilot training costs for pilots in excess of those needed to operate the revenue delivered. So if you need 30 pilots to generate 30 million in revenue, and you have 60 pilots on your payroll, 30 of which are not flying for revenue, but are training so we can do 50 million in revenue, that's what the adjustment's for. So this is not recurring training. This is not for existing pilots that are flying for revenue. These are non-revenue generating pilots for future revenue growth.
It's really an investment in growth. And so we separate that out.
This is a short question here. Do you have further plans, or what are your plans for A330s?
A330 is on our list. We will, at some point, sign operating leases for A330s. We've actually started pulling together the manuals that we would need to submit to the FAA to do that. We have not pulled the trigger on signing any LOIs at this point. What we want to do again is ensure that we get the airplanes onto our certificate, the A320s and the freighter aircraft, to ensure that we lock in our 2023 plan. But we have a planning team that has put together our plan to put the A330 on the certificate. We've got a timeline, we've got a basic set of manuals put together. We're talking to every lessor out there about the A330. And in particular, talking about A330 passenger aircraft that could eventually be converted to A330 freighter aircraft. So we would want to operate a mix of passenger and freighter aircraft to complement the narrow body fleet that we have.
Does any future financing include taking out the $6 million, 15% instrument that comes due in March? But I don't think that's right.
So what's the question?
Well, I guess the question that the person's trying to ask here is, and I'm going from memory, you had a $5 million note and you've drawn down against that. And I believe it was a 6-month note. So what are plans in and around that?
So, yeah, so the first part of the question is, in our new financing, would we take that out? Yes. Our plan would be to take out the $6 million as well as we drew 2.5 of the 5 million. So it's 8.5 million. So in any financing structure, as we talk to potential investors, we make it clear that that money has to be, or that those facilities need to be taken out. And of course, anyone coming in would want to do that because they would want to have a senior position on the company. So that's, we had always intended to finance those out. It was a very good way for us to raise money with minimal dilution. And so we'll take those out and as part of any larger financing that we do.
A question about Joseph DeGrossa, hope I pronounced that properly. Based on an insider report, he had sold 376,000 shares in early February to early March, I believe. Still holds 2.5 million shares, but the question is, he used to be on your board. Do you have any background on that? And I've already answered the question. Yes, he is a major shareholder.
Yeah, look, people sell shares for lots of different reasons. One of them is to pay taxes. I don't know Joe's personal situation, and certainly wouldn't ask him. He was one of the first dollars in back in 2019. And he runs a private equity fund, and he's got lots of funding requirements for lots of his other transactions. So I don't see anything. I don't see anything untoward in his selling. Again, it's a fraction of what he owns. He continues to be a big supporter of ours. He's opened many doors for us. We keep him to the extent we can, because he's not an insider. We keep him apprised of what we're doing. So I don't see anything.
I don't think there's no conclusion to draw from his selling other than he's had the stock for over 5 years and
right.
He sold some.
And he has investors in his fund, and he has to show some liquidity and some progress in those investments. By the way, I bought shares during the first quarter, which everyone should have seen those reports.
If the company wanted GlobalX to manage several aircraft, would you have that ability?
We need a little bit more detail. It depends on the aircraft and some other things, but we've been approached to manage other people's A320s. Not a business that we want to get into right now. We certainly would look at it. Money is money, revenue is revenue. But given the complexity of our operation now, I think that we need to focus on what we are doing. Focus on A320 passenger and cargo airplanes. Certainly, if the right deal came along, we would take a look at it, but that's not our focus right now.
Interesting question. Why are you providing a plane or planes to Lynx Air, which is a competitor to Canada Jetline?
Lynx doesn't compete with Canada Jetlines. They operate out of Calgary. Canada Jetlines operates out of Toronto. And if you look at what they're doing now, a lot of what Canada Jetlines is doing is exactly what GlobalX does. So they're flying sport teams. I think they've signed some deals with some
CFL.
soccer teams up in Canada. They're flying for Sunwing. They're flying for Flair. Okay, very much our business model. They've seen what we've been doing. We talk to them. We give them advice on what we did right, what we did wrong. They're doing some scheduled service. I saw, I guess, Toronto, Vancouver at some point, some other things. But when it comes to customers and clients, okay, we are separate from Canada Jetlines. We are agnostic in who we provide our aircraft to. As long as it's a viable, real organization, they have money, okay, and they pass all of the KYC tests and everything else that we put them through. We are agnostic. We will fly our airplane for them. That's what our responsibility is to our shareholders. We are not limited in who we can fly for or how we can fly vis-a-vis any other airline. We work for our shareholders, just as Canada Jetlines works for their shareholders.
And what are the future plans for Capital Air?
Capital.
Capital is just a shell company. It's a name that we have trademarked. Our thoughts may be in the future that a lot of our government business moves to that, but that would not be a separate certificate. It would not be separate pilots and flight attendants or a separate organization. It would just be a DBA name from GlobalX, so that we can better align that subsidiary's operations with the client and separate that from our other core businesses, which are flying for other airlines and sport teams and so forth.
I guess about it. There's some other questions here about the Oak Tree financing, which you've already talked about, maintenance facilities. So all of that has been covered. Fair number of questions there. Thank you for very detailed answers. And gentlemen, with that, any closing comments?
No, Grant, again, I appreciate Howard Group setting this together. We appreciate everyone's participation. Looks like we have a little over 40 people, which is about what we've done in the past. Let me just say that this management team and board are working very, very hard for our shareholders. We made significant progress in Q1 in developing our infrastructure, our corporate development, so that we can take advantage of the opportunities in front of us this summer and this fall and going on into 2024. We're set up to be able to take the freighters. We're set up to be able to take more passenger aircraft. We're set up to bring on more clients and increase the flying that we do for our current clients, as well as add new clients to our roster. So we're very bullish about this company. We're very bullish about our prospects and the opportunities in front of us. Again, we take a longer term view of this business. And I believe that that view has paid dividends, because we are now in a position over the next 12 months to double the size of this company. So with that, Grant, we appreciate your efforts and appreciate everyone's time. Ryan, if you have anything to add.
No, as Ed alluded to, I think there's a lot of positives coming out of this quarter. We believe we're really well set up for the future.
It's important for investors to look at the progress that we made this quarter in developing our infrastructure to take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of us. Tremendous amount of effort, assets that we have created that don't go on the balance sheet, but are there for us now to monetize in terms of increased flying for more clients on more routes and more parts of the world. So with that, Grant, thank you very much. I look forward to talking to everyone again next quarter.
Thank you, gentlemen. And thank you to those who attended.